Dear Yata friends, first, congratulations for organizing this year's Nordic Security Conference and putting together such a highly interesting and timely program. I would also like to thank you for inviting me back to open this conference, emphasizing the strong and good relationship between the Norwegian Atlantic Committee and Yata. Yata Norway is a highly successful organization, all thanks to you, young people volunteering to create debate and interest in matters related to security, defense, and foreign policy. The Norwegian Atlantic Committee and Yata share the same mandate, namely to contribute to fact-based knowledge sharing on developments in foreign, defense, and security matters. Therefore, I think it is great to see how we complement each other and organize thought-provoking conferences to our respective networks. I am sure that we will be able to continue this fruitful cooperation in the years to come. Speaking today from my home office in the midst of a challenging global pandemic illustrates that we live in a fragile and rapidly changing world. Rapid change was also something that hit us in December 2010, when a young Tunisian fruit seller set himself alight in protest against the harassment and humiliation he experienced from his own authorities. His act marked the beginning of what became the Arab Spring. Accounts of the young man's act rippled through the region, spread from his Tunisia to Egypt, Syria, Libya, as well as other states. Today, more than a decade after the uprising began, little has improved for those who demanded a better life and stood up against autocratic rulers or North African and Middle Eastern countries. The chain of uprising that trembled both the region and the world has led to devastating long-term consequences, and most of the countries that were affected by protests are still ruled by despotic regimes today, unfortunately. The war in Syria represents the worst conflict in a generation. The war has made the country a regional and an international battleground, literally a field of active military battle among a wide range of opposing parties. After a decade of horrific violence and human tragedies that made Syria the defining war of the early 21st century, the fighting has tapered off, but the suffering has not. The developments caused a severe humanitarian disaster. Since 2011, 6 million Syrians have been uprooted from their homes but remain displaced inside their own country. Another 6 to 7 million have been forced to flee their country. Some of them became part of a wave of refugees reaching the shores of Europe. The flow of migrants that peaked in 2015 and 16 has continued even during the pandemic. The world has witnessed the largest refugee crisis since 1945. Let me be clear. I do not consider people escaping war and misery a threat to European security. But unfortunately, the refugee crisis has led to political fragmentation and polarization between European countries, as well as inside many European states, still evident today. Images of refugees drowning or experiencing other brutal conditions as they sacrifice their lives on the way to Europe have affected us all. In the autumn of 2015, German Chancellor Angela Merkel opened Germany's borders, and almost a million walked in. That decision was hailed by many as the right thing to do at that moment, but it was soon criticized, and its political implications were far-reaching both for Germany and for Europe. In Germany, the relatively newly established right-wing party, AfD, got new winds in their sails, and in the following elections became the third largest party in the German Bundestag, or parliament. In the European Union, Merkel's decision resulted in new divisions, partly between the Union's eastern and western member states. The crisis exposed severe shortcomings in Europe's asylum system, but it was above all a huge stress test for core European values, such as respect for human dignity, human rights, and solidarity. This became obvious at the height of the crisis, when the EU reached a highly controversial agreement with Turkey designed to stop migrants from entering Europe. Migrants that have fled war, hunger, and poverty, hoping for a brighter future in the European continent. The United Kingdom's vote to leave the EU was also in part a reaction to the refugee crisis triggered by the Syrian uprising and the subsequent civil war. This is an example on how populists in time of crisis can use fear and insecurities to their advantage. Moreover, we have seen the destabilization of the North African and Middle East region has created fertile ground for terrorist organizations. In the chaos that followed the eruption of civil war in Syria, the most violent group in modern jihad, the so-called Islamic State, proclaimed a caliphate straddling Syria and Iraq that reshaped global terrorism. This took us all by surprise, and once again, it showed how fast things can change in international politics. ISIL brought brutal terror both to the Middle East as well as to European cities. ISIL has also attracted young European citizens to leave their life behind and become foreign fighters in their name. In order to fight back ISIL, Norwegian armed forces have taken part in a collective mission training Iraqi forces, enabling them to defend against and overcome the threat made by ISIL. Our contribution to this operation continues to this day. In sum, all this shows how the world is interconnected and how events taking place in one part of the globe might lead to consequences in a totally different part of the world. This can also be illustrated by how a large number of refugees from the Middle East in 2016 crossed the Russian-Norwegian border in the high north at Storskog on bicycles. This showed us that what happens in North Africa and the Middle East region concerns us in North Europe as well. The Norwegian Atlantic Committee and IATA are two organizations that both facilitate discussions and debates on foreign affairs and security issues relevant to the Atlantic Alliance. Our job is to create an arena for information sharing and networking, and to provide fact-based knowledge on issues that shape the transatlantic area. This is a very important job, especially in times when different forces and domestic developments try to pull us apart. A big part of this is also to openly debate and evaluate if things could have been done differently in any given situation. Therefore, NorSec 2021 is so important. We must dare to look back and dig deep into what was done and examine the consequences of those choices made. Only then will we be better prepared for the next challenges, whatever it might be. Thank you for listening. Good luck, and may you have a fruitful and intriguing conference.